Folks, here it is. I know you've been waiting for this. It is my review of the Hobby King Overlord 6-way diversity racing receiver. That name is way too long. I'm just going to call it the Overlord. That's what everybody else is calling it too. I have been flying with this for the last couple weeks, and I feel like I've got enough of a sense of it to give it a general review. But I have not done the rigorous head-to-head testing that I did in my Fat Shark diversity module shootout. I am going to do that. You are going to see that on my channel before the end of December for sure. But for now, here is a general review. And if you want a real head-to-head, which is better, you're going to have to wait for that. But I think that most of you don't need that because really, is it fair to put a 6-way diversity receiver head-to-head against something like, a 2-way diversity Fat Shark module? One of them's a ground station, one of them isn't. It's curious from sort of an intellectual perspective, how they perform against each other, but they really don't fit the same purpose, do they? So I feel like many of you are going to get what you need from this video in terms of answering the question, should you buy this right now? I'll start by saying that from a general usability perspective, the Overlord is okay. One of the things that I like the most about it is that it has the LCD screen where you can very easily see if anybody is on the channel before you power up your copter. Now, granted, you can do the same thing with a LaForge with the band scanner or just by scanning through channels with your receiver and seeing if anybody is there. But being able to just quickly glance over at the LCD screen to see what the power level is on the channel before you power up, very, very convenient, very nice. I do like it. The menus are a little bit annoying to move through. There's no back button on it, at least not as far as I can tell. There's an enter button. And so in order to go back to the main screen, you have to go down, 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 down to the exit option on the menu and hit enter. At least I couldn't figure out any other way to do it. If I've messed that up, I'm sure you'll tell me in the comments. And I have the same complaint about the Overlord that I do about the real ACC and the TrueD V1.0 at least, which is that there isn't an easy way to set up a favorite channel set or to go quickly to a specific channel or channels that you commonly use. You can scan through, you can do a channel search, and you can easily jump to a channel that happens to be active, but the problem is that, like all of the other receivers, the Overlord picks nearby channels. So if you're on 5740, it might pick up 5735 and 5730 and 5745, and actually getting to the channel that you intend to get to can be a little bit tedious. I wish there was a way to set it to a specific predetermined channel set. The Overlord does have the ability to set itself into race mode, in which case it'll use the race band channels only, but if you would prefer to use, for example, just 5740, 5800, and 5860, you're out of luck. Now, it does occur to me that this isn't quite a fair test, so I'm going to show you some footage now from me flying around my house, and if you watch my channel enough, you have a general sense of how much breakup you usually see with the LaForge or any of the other things I used, and I think you'll see that you can still see where the diversity switches occur. You can still see a slight glitch in the screen where the diversity switches occur, but in general, I think the overall image quality is better here than on something like the LaForge or the TrueD, where every time it switches antennas, you get a much bigger glitch on the screen. I will say, though, that the picture is not all rosy. I had some cases, and I couldn't figure out what the common variable was, where there was a really bad glitch. It was clearly related to a diversity switch between antennas, and I would get a screen tearing or screen rolling. It was really bad. I'm going to show you one of the most prominent examples of that. In this example, I did a big punch out, just a big tall punch out, and then at the top, I flipped over inverted. And when I flipped over inverted, I completely lost video, just completely. I had the presence of mind to just sort of lower the throttle and know that I would fall back into range if I just waited. And as soon as the video came back, I flipped back over again and I flew out of it. But I've done punch outs like this. There was nothing extraordinary about this punch out. Nothing about my copter had changed. And yet, when I did the punch out, I lost signal entirely. And there's something else you should know, which is that someone was spectating using a pair of goggles, just Fat Shark goggles with a NextWave module in them, not even a LaForge or a TrueD, and a typical cloverleaf antenna, and they did not experience this dropout. So I know for a fact that it was something to do with the Hobby King Overlord. I don't know what it was, but something to do with the Overlord. I can only guess that it may have something to do with the diversity switching not working correctly, but I know for a fact that the fat shark goggles that someone else was looking through did not drop out. This is consistent with my overall experience with the Overlord, that in general, it's pretty good. Now, I haven't done any ultimate range tests. Most of my flying has been relatively close in. The ultimate range test is coming, but in general, it's pretty good. But every so often, it has kind of a bad glitch, and you'll get a sort of a rolling screen for maybe half a second, or some kind of problem with sync when there's a diversity switch. And that leads me to have some hesitation about recommending this. If you're a freestyle pilot and you're going to a new place to fly, you really can't afford to have a little half a second glitch where you've completely lost video until the receiver syncs up again. That kind of thing, even if it only happens very, very infrequently, can be the difference between taking your copter home in one piece and not. And if you compare this experience to, for example, the LaForge or the True-D, you find that they have sort of more glitches overall, but fewer really bad glitches. I mean, these glitches that the Overlord had, I was not far out. I was just flying in my field. I was in the same place I fly all the time, and all of a sudden, you just have completely lost your signal for 1 second while the screen rolls. Now, I can't do the math for you on whether the overall good quality of the signal is worth occasionally having a worse than average glitch. Only you can sort of think about whether that's worth it or not. Let me answer a technical question about the Overlord before I forget. There have been some people who've wondered whether the Overlord really is doing six-way diversity. And one of the things people have seen is a YouTube video where a guy takes the top of the Overlord off, and there is only one visible receiver module. Another thing people have pointed out is that the Overlord only draws about 600 milliamps, which is, they say, not enough to have 6 separate receiver modules in there. Well, Hobby King has released a video where they have shown the inside of the Overlord, and they've demonstrated that there are, in fact, 6 receiver modules in there. At least there are 6 silver metal shields that look like they're, perhaps they're empty. I doubt it. I think we can take Hobby King at face value on this. The reason that we only saw one receiver module in that one YouTube video is because the center antenna's receiver module is on the bottom of the board, and the other 5 antennas are on the top. And so unless you can see both sides of the board by fully disassembling it, you miss them. So this is, in fact, a true diversity receiver. There are 6 different receivers, and we're selecting between the one that has the best signal. Another issue that people have raised is that the Aomway 14 dBi antennas on the Overlord did really, really badly in Bruce Simpson RC Model Reviews tests, and you can go check out his video on that if you so desire. I think that only the sort of ultimate range test that I haven't done yet, that I'm going to do, will sort of tell that out. In the distances that I'm flying, signal strength is high enough that even if the antenna is really bad, it's still better than the cloverleaf that I have been flying on. And we should keep in mind that these antennas are nominally 14 dBi, but let's say they're really horrible and in fact they're only 10 dBi. Well, if that's true, they're still 2 dBi better than the Lumineer patch I'm using and 8 dBi better than the cloverleaf antenna that I'm using. Now, I know there are more factors that go into the overall performance of an antenna than just its dBf gain, such as, most importantly, its axial ratio, but I think it's fair to say, from my subjective experience of flying with the Overlord, that it's better than a cloverleaf. So it's got that going for it. But if the antennas are truly 14 dBi, it should be much, much better than a cloverleaf. And although I haven't done the quote-unquote ultimate range test, I have got another test I did that I think you're going to find pretty interesting. This is a satellite image of where we were flying when we were doing the racing you saw earlier in this video. And what I did is I walked away while someone else was flying, and I took the Overlord with me. And you can see the distance marked here on the graph, and you can see the rough locations. The pilots were flying in the soccer field to the lower left, or the football field for you folks overseas, and I was standing over in the upper right-hand location. Now, this is a distance of about 800 feet, or about 240 meters, and then I recorded the pilot's FPV feed. And I think the result was pretty good, but I realized that this didn't result in any roaming, because the pilot was so far away that they were basically just on one antenna at a time. So the next thing I did is I picked the Overlord up and I held it over my head and I started turning in a circle, forcing it to repeatedly roam from one antenna to the next, to the next, to the next. and I felt like this simulated the effect of flying much further away than I would maybe feel comfortable flying on an untested device without any actual risk of me crashing, losing a copter, killing a puppy, etc. And I think this test may be the final test you need to help you decide whether you want to spend about $200 US on this product. At this distance, with this many obstructions, I feel like this result is pretty darn good. The Overlord is not perfect. It has some issues occasionally where you'll have a worse than normal glitch, and in one case, I had a really bad glitch that could have cost me my copter. There are still unanswered questions about it. How will its ultimate range compare when we do the straight out and back test compared to something like the Clearview or just a little Forge maybe, or TrueD with a regular Luminaire patch on it? Well, we're going to find out about that. That's coming. But I bet for many of you, this video will have shown you everything you need to help you decide whether now is the time to buy this product. If you were wondering whether this product was just garbage, it's not. It's definitely not. It is a serious contender. It is not perfect. It has a few flaws, but for many people, I think it's going to be well worth the price. Thanks for watching. Happy flying.